Thank you, Robin. Thanks, everybody, for joining today. Wanted to talk a little bit about what we've kind of understood and experienced over the years as it relates to customer experience, contact center, omni-channel journey. I think all these big buzzwords, but really it's more about the how. That's really, we've talked a lot about the what can be technology, the pieces that make up, some slick demos. But really, we've identified at ConvergeOne, a big gap or a miss, I think, in the market that probably started maybe about 10 years ago. And today I want to kind of discuss with you kind of how we got there, what we've identified, but most importantly, how we've solutioned this, how we've actually got beyond this. As we kind of look at the agenda today, what I want to do is, talk a little bit about the evolution. So what steps did we take and maybe where did things kind of stop or get a little stale? Talk a little bit about, what it means to be, a consumer of customer experience, especially when we get into digital. It's a radically different world. And I think the generation banding of those that are, baby boomers all the way down to Gen Zers, we're going to see a different mode of how they really want to communicate. But if we think about what we've done in this space for many, many years, we still use an ACD, and the C stands for call, not digital. So how do we change that? How do we move that through? And then kind of go into a little graphic that kind of walks us through, kind of the chaos that we've created over the last, so many years. And then talk a little bit about some of the base platforms that are kind of required today to get us to those solutions and really what it takes from that, and also a services perspective. What is a different kind of service? And we've heard Agile before, and usually that's used in a development environment. But we're seeing services actually being delivered more in an Agile fashion than how we've kind of seen our waterfall methodologies in the past. And then talk a little bit about why we're using this word EXpowerment. We're kind of taking a play on the fact that we think about customer experience. Experience is a little bit more of a rear view mirror. What happened? What did we do? But really, if you think of the value of digital transformation, the output or the outcomes, the value that comes from it really is empowering the end user. If we think of, why we like, Uber or Lyft, we like it because it gives us all the power. We know everything that's going on. We kind of control everything but driving the car. The same thing can happen in a contact center. How do we drive people into the right experience? How do we give them the power to communicate the way they want, make it frictionless, all the values that we see in that. And then really talk about the platform that we've designed here at ConvergeOne. A little bit about ConvergeOne, just to put it in the right framing. We're about a $2 billion revenue solution provider in the space of about 70% of our revenue comes from contact center and collab. We're ranked as number one across pretty much all vendors in that space, whether it's some of the major brands or even some of the accompanying software that comes with it. We have an NPS score of 72, transactional of in the 90s. And of the 2,500 employees, we have 1,700 are engineers. So we have a lot of people that are working, day in, day out in, this space, really understanding kind of, where customers want to be and how can we get there. So I think if we look at a little bit of the history of how we got here, we all know what an ACD is, right? And I've already called out the C is call. In that, though, the problem that we have that you see on the bottom is the metrics. We live and die by average handle time, average wait time. We think about concepts around IVRs and around, ways that we can maybe help people self-service. But again, it's always in that voice thought. The digital really hasn't played a huge role yet. When we started multi-channel, let's say around 2000, right after .bomb blew up, so early 2000s, we started to see, entrance. It wasn't necessarily always directly the contact center folks, the agents. Sometimes it was marketing. Sometimes it was social media. People were trying to figure out what was going on in Twitter, how people were talking about them and how that interacted. So we started to see these different channels, but we didn't necessarily see them directly in a contact center. But it was also pretty new. The internet was only 5, 6, 7 years old for most of us. Most of us were still getting used to email. So it wasn't that big of a deal. But you fast forward to today, we have more forms of communication coming out almost every month than we're used to. Everything from TikTok to, different forms of, Apple Business Chat. And so we see this plethora of technology coming at us, but how that really adapts and how we can make that work in a contact center and make it effective. Again, back down to that agent agent and consumer really is a big deal. And then we kind of took this notion from how other people were using forms of, let's call it omni-channel. We put it in the contact center, but one of the things we never really thought about was omni-channel by its definition means that you have to have a point of truth. You have to know who your customer is. You have to know that Mark Lengenke has 5 email addresses, 3 cell phones. I have Facebook, I have Twitter, I have, different forms of social media, Instagram, all the different components. We're not capturing that anywhere. And as we've always looked at it from a contact center perspective, I think we've really missed the fact that it's a CRM problem. It's not really a contact center problem. And in that, we haven't really thought that much about how contact center and CRM integrate, except for at the agent desktop. And we believe at ConvergeOne that once it gets to the desktop, it's a little too late. You can't route, you can't report, you can't understand how people have used AI, bots, how they've transacted until they've really hit that contact center platform, and then to the most expensive resource you have, which is your agent. So how can we really facilitate the ability for CRM to be the point of truth with the major problem that's sitting in front of us, which is how do you fill up that truth? How do you get all of my information? If my bank was to send me out a form and have me fill out every single form of communication that I might have, I'm not going to fill it out. You think of the privacy laws, GDPR, California, nobody's going to fill out, a form online or paper and send it back, right? So how do we give a customer that power, that EXpowerment again, to opt in, to be a part of a transaction that is using a channel I want? And that's really where we see omni-channel for the first time really kind of working in a global setting. And when we think about the value of omni-channel, it's interesting to have all those pieces, but really the value that we derive out of omni-channel is the ability to know that I've been using those channels and that maybe I prefer one over the other, or maybe I've transacted over one recently and we want to pull that data in. And that's really where things kind of fall apart and where we've created a lot of siloed technology. And as we look to get to journey orchestration, that's kind of that idea that, let's map this out. Let's take what I just said and let's map it to something that goes on. And then as we get to customer experience, it's all about, okay, well, how do we make it different? How do we make it better for an end customer? And then as we look at it, the journey itself is a very long time span, and it doesn't really have a lot of validity in what I was doing a year or 10 years ago. And that's where we look at our concept of conversations, which is, what are you talking about today? What is your true intent? What are you after? And how can we really bring the relevant context of what's going on all the way through? So taking from the value of Omni, taking the value of journey, but really getting it to that next level. I think if we think about the end consumer again, we're having to think about what's in their mind. And again, thinking about these generational bands that we didn't have to worry about 20, 30 years ago. Everybody used voice because that's all we had. Everybody used email because that's all we had. But now we have a lot of different choices, and we have a lot of people that are born into different versions of how they communicate. Gen Zers are born into a digital age. They don't want to use the phone. Baby boomers were born into voice. They don't want to use a lot of digital. So how do we identify the channel that they want, but also as they're getting through the system, as they're trying to self-serve, whether it's through a bot or an IVR, whether they're actually talking to an agent, they've talked before, how do we bring all that relevant context, identifying who they are, not having to transfer from one agent to the other and start all over again with your dog's birthday and all the different, secrets that you're supposed to bring with you to re-identify you, but bring everything along. So we know why you're contacting, we know the what you're after, and really how you're getting there. I think as we have tried to paint this picture for a lot of people, we kind of built this graphic to kind of walk you through kind of how we got here and what we call kind of this chaos to harmony. And if you think of, kind of the late 80s, we started with, a PBX. We had the ability to give everybody their own extension, some cool hunt groups, and away we went. And then we started to add things like ACDs for agents. We started to add meeting solutions for audio bridges. As the agents started to grow, we started to pool them into skill groups. We added IVR for self-service. We started to do call recording for compliance or, just to know what was going on. We started, building more and more into different forms of media with video. And then boom, in the early 2000s, we had unified communications, we had voicemail and email, and all this stuff started to integrate. But I think, it was right after that the technology kind of overwhelmed and got in the way, because we started to add BYOD. We didn't want to necessarily, but it was just something that happened. We started to integrate things and try to make one point of truth, which is who's a user in Active Directory. And then we bought a company, and then we bought 3 more. And of course, they have different technology, and of course, they don't adhere to the same rules and technology and thought process and roadmap that we did. So of course, things are radically different. We tried to fix that by adding SIP trunks and having a global dial plan and putting SPCs everywhere. We started adding advanced applications around speech. We started to bring in BPOs, hopefully, to help out with some of the calls. And then, as we kind of grew and grew, we then got to a point of getting to, some cloud. And cloud was originally, how do we move compute out? And then we started to build into more forms of applications in the cloud. And then Teams came, and then we had born in the cloud providers, and then we had different operating systems and different mobile devices, and then we got into CPaaS. And so all of this got us to a point where this is the chaos that we have today. But how do we create harmony in it? How do we create a single hub that allows us to think about the application, not the technology, integrate things together, and really, give an application of experience beyond omnichannel? And so that's really what we're thinking about today is getting to a point of building out some of these applications and seeing things in a different light. And it all kind of starts with a customer engagement hub, which is built on a digital experience platform. I know there's a big fancy words. If you're with Gartner, you can go look it up. They've got some good papers on it, on how they've kind of built out their collab platforms. But as we looked at it, we said, this is really where we need to get to, because we need to remove some of the chaos that I just put in there, because APIs don't talk to APIs. We need something in the middle to manage this. We need something to really control the data that's flowing back and forth, because at the end of the day, you want to report on what people are doing. So it's not just the silo of making SMS go all the way to an agent. It's more important that we're recording that and we know what's going on, so we can identify what value we're deriving, how customers are perceiving that, how they're using it. So we know how to market to them better. We know how to treat them better. We know how to get agents off the phone. And as we look at that, we also need to know that we can't just pick and choose the technology we want, because we don't know what customers are going to use, the end consumers. So if you're on a platform that is, Avaya, and then you buy a company at Cisco, we have to have something in the middle that normalizes that for everybody. If you're today using Facebook Messenger and tomorrow's Apple Business Chat, and then it's TikTok the next day, that has to be there as well. So how do you create a platform that allows all of that integration, that then brings you up to a next layer of that digital experience platform? So how do we treat digital different than voice? How do we then get to customer engagement that allows me to bring intent and context to what's happening, whether it's self-service, whether it's what I was doing last time? Hey, welcome back, Mark. Are you contacting about your mortgage today? Yes. Okay, I have all your information. Let's get an agent on hot with all the information, and let's just keep moving instead of asking a ton of questions. So as we start to build all these kind of use cases and grow with our customers and how they're dealing with their consumers, we know that we need to kind of go take this at a different pace in services as well. So we've actually kind of gone back to the drawing board and said, okay, the idea of asking a customer what they want in 18 months doesn't work anymore. So how do we start with maybe 1 or 2 use cases, but go through this agile approach, this iterative approach to take something, test it, get it out there, measure the KPIs and all the data, which is step 3 there, and then really know if it's working or not, kind of bring it back to the loop. Just like we do with development today and the whole CI/CD process, we're delivering that in services as well. So it's a different model, different way to think about it. But really, at the end of the day, we win on both sides. The customer gets their frictionless ability to use whatever they want. The enterprise gets to derive higher customer sat scores, lower operating expenses, faster to market, winning over their competitors because they have higher differentiation. All of it is just a win-win across the board. And the way we do it at ConvergeOne is through a platform we call Conversations. It's something that sits in the middle, let's say, of all the rest of your technology. And as you look to either leverage some of the investment you have today, whether it's disparate or multi-vendor, doesn't matter. So we de-risk that. We de-risk your future investment because this platform is based on microservices. So as the microservices are defined in days, they're connected in, and now you can say, okay, now we're bringing in SMS through Twilio or CPaaS through Avaya. It doesn't matter. All of these different channels just kind of snap together, and now we can work on the business logic and really get you to that next level, which empowers your customer. So with that, Robin, I'm going to turn it back to you.
All right, great. Thank you very much. And if anybody has any questions, please go ahead and insert them into the right of your viewing screen. We do have a few here. So how relevant is contextual data driving project versus product level approach to building services, knowing the multiple moving parts inherent to any service?
It's a great question, and I think it's something that we've hoped that AI can solve for us, but it really can't. And so the way we've gone at that, the relevant context, is really to understand, again, based on what is a conversation. Our conversation is what we would normally call an intent. So instead of guessing at it, let's just be very upfront and talk to a customer. What are you contacting about? And whether it's something they've put into a bot, text, a text bot, or whether they've talked to the agent and the agent adds it, as that intent is defined, we have a date that it starts, a date that it ends, and everything that happens in the middle. So call it a mini journey. But as we're going through that intent derives what is the relevant context. And really, when we look at that context, it's not giving it back to an agent and having them try to stitch it all together. It's understanding that what was talked about last is probably the most important and bring that to bear, but also bring out the facts that are behind it. We don't need to know that somebody said hello and goodbye and all the other components around it. It was really around what part of the conversation was really the nouns and the verbs, let's say, versus some of the other components that are in there. So we're not striving for AI to go solve all this, because I don't think it can. I don't think we have enough data to do that with, and I don't think the tooling around it really is powerful enough to drive that. So we're really being more purposeful than hoping that a product or solution can answer that.
So where do you see the value of bimodal approaches versus agile? How does each help in innovation as opposed to maintaining and upgrading the service?
Yeah, so the bimodal is we kind of see it more in transition than anything, and the agile kind of sits on top, I guess, is kind of the way I look at it. In that agile is more of a process, right, where we kind of take an idea that we think is right and we put some metrics around it. This would be success, this would be failure, and then we try it very quickly. And that's again why microservices is a key to this, because it's a technology that lends us to be very adaptive and very quick at changing something and testing and knowing if it's working or not. But I'll tell you, bar none, the most important piece to all of this is the data. And it's not just that we have data, and it's not a data lake, and it's not all the misnomers we have around data science fixing bad data. It's collecting the right data up front. It's knowing that you've got everything. We call it cradle to grave in voice. I'll just use that term as the cradle to grave in every transaction you do with your customer. You have to have that base of everything that's happened, every way to look at it, in a non-SQL, non-relational database kind of mentality, to be able to then bring that back to the conversation, and again, to make it relevant. So the agile piece of it really is a way to just kind of a methodology to think about how to iterate more different solutions. And again, we don't ask our customers anymore, what do you want your contact center to look like in 18 months? Because they don't know, or they want, oh, I just want SMS. But when we pull that thread apart, the whole sweater falls apart. And then they're like, oh, I didn't realize there was this much to it. So
Yeah.
to us, it's really more about being able to, forget building these projects for 18 months, have a platform that you can be agile with. And that's what C1 Conversations is. And then do those very quick little tests, knowing that you have the data underneath it to actually tell you from an analytics perspective if it's working or not.
Got it. Just a quick question for you. I know you talk about this being sort of a hub where you have something that sort of sits in the middle of the channels and then all the integrations that you have on the other side. I think it was your last or second to last slide. I was thinking about, what does the agent user interface look like? Does this all come in? So does what you're doing replace any other agent user interface that I have, or is this all back end?
No, that's a great question. And if I had another 45 minutes, we could go through the whole thing. But and that would have been the next slides, right? Because the agent experience is just as important as the customer experience. And our agent desktop is actually something we've invested quite a bit in. We've got hundreds of thousands of people on it today. But again, that's where all that data is going to reside for the agent. That's where we're going to bring intent and context and all that up to them. They're going to be able to research and look at what's been going on in that conversation in that desktop. And so we do have it currently integrated to ServiceNow, Salesforce, Zendesk, Oracle, Microsoft, standalone, and anything else that needs to be there. We don't just leave an API for you. We actually connect them all together. So
Great.